I've seen this movie at least 10 times, and I never noticed that Cruise's ex-wife's husband had a spectacular home gym. Amazing, the stuff that you pick up on now.
And a hearty welcome to one and all. We're back in the car for episode 229 of the Confessions of a Not-So-Dangerous Mind podcast. I'd like to thank you all for spending some of your late Saturday afternoon here with me in New York. Once again, we're going to skip past all that promotional jazz and get right to the guts of the episode. Today is the 19th anniversary of the release date of Steven Spielberg's somehow underrated War of the Worlds. A movie that I did not see in theaters. I really wasn't going to the movies very often in the mid-2000s. It was a little bit of a depressive stretch of real estate in my life. It lasted a couple of decades. I'm kind of kidding, but kind of not. But I am a Spielberg fan. Always have been. Since the first Spielberg film I watched, which was E.T. in theaters with my mom and dad in the summer of '82, probably late June, early July, give or take. I love Spielberg, and Tom Cruise is the answer to an absurd personal trivia question. Which major figure in Hollywood did I see the most consecutive movies by in theaters? The answer is Tom Cruise. What did I see from Tom Cruise in theaters? Well, we saw A Few Good Men in theaters, and then saw The Firm in theaters, and then I watched Interview with the Vampire in theaters, and then Mission Impossible 96, the first one, and then I watched Jerry Maguire, and then I watched Eyes Wide Shut. That's the record. Most consecutive movies seen of one actor, actress, director, what have you. Tom Cruise. So despite my love for Spielberg and being a Tom Cruise fan, just didn't go see it in the summer of 2005. Now, the sort of weird historical narrative, there is an idea that was the summer at which Tom Cruise jumped on Oprah's couch because he was in love with Katie Holmes, who he ended up marrying, as we know. I hope, I'm not making any jokes, I hope that they had stretches where they actually were happy. I don't know that, but neither here nor there. But it was that summer where he jumped on Oprah's couch and pumped his fist like a guy on bowling night who's just gotten 3 strikes in a row. And it was also the time frame in which he got into a bizarre back and forth with Matt Lauer on the Today Show about psychiatric care, psychotherapy, psychiatry, and it was when he sort of, I don't want to say come out of the closet, but when he was okay talking about being a Scientologist, that he decided, you know what, it's fair game, Matt, you can ask me what you want, and then it ended up with them almost having words, which is ridiculous because Tom Cruise throughout his career and today is generally so gracious in interviews. Doesn't necessarily give a lot about himself, and hasn't, but that's not the same thing. He is someone who has always had a reputation of being good with fans, as long as fans are polite and don't, hit them with water guns or do stupid shit like that. But he got into it with Matt Lauer, and you could probably find some information on the internet saying that Tom Cruise's antics, there's a word I love, antics, his antics hurt the film. Well, let me tell you something. War of the Worlds made over $600 million at the box office. 600 fucking million. 19 years ago. Oh, inflation. Yeah, we're talking about close to $1 billion. All right, so I don't know how much it could possibly have been hurt by Tom Cruise pumping his fist like it's bowling night on Oprah Winfrey's couch and almost dressing down Matt Lauer, who was incredulous. He couldn't believe that Cruise was getting mad at him. You don't know the history of Scientology. No. You don't know the history of psychiatry. I do. Help me help you, Matt. Help me help you. Yeah. The film, I believe, is a near masterpiece. We're talking about War of the Worlds, not the Jerry Maguire clip that I just pretended he had with Matt Lauer as he and Lauer were having this preposterous, contentious interview out of nowhere. Something you don't really see that often from celebrities. Every once in a while, Tom Selleck on The View a million years ago thought it was going to be softballs, and he actually got asked some tough questions. This shit happens. And sometimes people handle it better than others. This was not, it shouldn't have been contentious. It was, but 600 plus million, and it smashed overseas. That's how you get to 600. But it was a movie that they all knew was going to play overseas. And honestly, the French don't give a shit whether or not Tom Cruise talks about Scientology or whether he's some sort of an expert on psychoanalysis or Freudian nonsense. Whatever. For what it tries to do, it succeeds brilliantly. And this movie, War of the Worlds, is very much a product of its time. Steven Spielberg would not have made that movie, I don't believe, before 9/11. The parallels, the unexpected attack, the unexplained attack, the we're all going to die, they're going to get us. All of that is very clearly speaking to post 9/11 America. This is not an accident. These things are on purpose. And Spielberg probably was in a pessimistic place at this particular time. Country was still, to some extent, struggling. The Iraq War had begun to go wrong. There were just a lot of things that were not great. And you could argue that there are a lot of things that are not great at any point in history. We're not going into sociology and the the ethnocentrism argument of, you love it or get out. No, we're not doing that. But the country was struggling because the Iraq War had started to go wrong, and 9/11. And what the fuck were we doing in Iraq? All of this stuff. These things inform pop culture. They inform movies, TV, music. So Spielberg, although he may have been in a down mood, a pessimistic mood, this is not the Spielberg, the lightness of touch of Catch Me If You Can 3 years earlier. It's a more grim film. You could argue it's by far the most grim science fiction film that Spielberg ever made. You get a lot of really bad deaths and ignoble deaths. It's so well made, so beautifully shot and orchestrated. And the special effects, there is CGI, but there are a lot of mechanical effects done during production, which are just brilliant. The execution, you want to talk like wrestling. Bret the Hitman Hart, his nickname, the excellence of execution. Well, you could call Steven Spielberg. You could say the same thing. The excellence of execution. The excellence of execution of the special effects and the Spielberg, the kind of radar sense that he possesses, that other directors I've talked about also possess, that he knows what to use at what point of the film. This process shot I'm going to do during production, we're going to have 100 actors, 80 of whom are extras, or 95 of whom are extras. They're going to be in the shot. We can do it, no problem. In this movie, it is easy to overlook Cruise's performance. He gives a well-rounded, fully formed performance. A guy, his name is Ray Ferrier. He is a divorced dad, not an unsuccessful person. The sense that you get from Ray Ferrier, he's not a deadbeat dad, but he's a guy who, he makes good money. He's like a crane operator, very, very difficult. You wouldn't want that kind of job. But he's a crane operator. He works, I'm not sure if he works like Port Authority. He probably does different things, but he is very good at his job. The movie shows us this. But he's the kind of guy who is going to drive a fancier car than he probably should. Because as a divorced dad, who may be a bit of an absentee father, but is not a deadbeat, this is not a loser, he just may not be that great of a dad. But he's the sort of person who would buy a $60,000 car when, given the level of expenses that he no doubt incurs every month, he probably has no business buying a $60,000 car. Ray Ferrier is that kind of guy. It doesn't make him evil, but it means that he's still a young man. I assume he's supposed to be around 40. Tom may be playing a little bit younger. But he is somebody who has not really lived up to his potential. He probably could have been a better husband, and he could have been, and could still be, a better father. And there were some jokes, people, because of the Matt Lauer interview, that there were scenes in the film, if it was today, there would have been a ton of memes, because there are moments in the film where I remember more than one critic saying he looks at his son like he's looking at Matt Lauer on TV last week. I mean, I thought it was funny. I hadn't even seen the movie. But Cruise's character in this movie and his performance, which he sells, he comes across as a father who wants to be more like a pal to his kids. And he does have a connection with his daughter. Dakota Fanning is really good. She is really good as the daughter. I don't remember the name of the actor, Justin somebody or other, I think, who plays the son. He's also very solid. But he wants to be buddies with them. But when shit goes wrong, he has a moment where his son is still giving him attitude, and he exerts his paternal, if you want to say paternal privilege. And that was the look that people said, he gave Matt Lauer the same look last week. Holy shit. But he has a moment where he kind of lays down the law. He said, listen, kiddo, I don't want anything bad to happen to you, but that doesn't mean that I will not fuck you up if you do what you just did ever again. Understand what I'm telling you. He doesn't have to say, I'm not some friend that you can fuck with. I'm your father, but he gets his point across. The kid understands. And he still, when shit goes wrong, when the aliens, they don't exactly, it's not really an alien invasion. It's more like they're already here type of movie. And then there's an invasion on top of that, I think. But he's still, his instinct is to see if he can get his son and his daughter to his ex-wife. And of course, he hopes that she's okay. And I'm not going to go so far down the rabbit hole and say, well, he only hopes she's okay because otherwise he's stuck with the kids and then they're all probably going to die. I think that he still has affection for his ex-wife. And Miranda Otto, who's had recently, Lord of the Rings, she's actually really good. It's a total thankless role, but she gives the character enough humanity, and a couple of kind of surprising bits of humor really works. So it takes the form. There are huge chunks of this where it is like a road movie, where you have characters who are maybe at each other's throats or scared or some combination of that, who are taking a long journey by car. And this film does that. And for me, and this is the idea being that you sometimes bring your own baggage. It doesn't have to be a negative thing, but your own experiences, and sometimes what are you going through in your life at present? And there are things that you pick up on after you've seen a movie a number of times. Maybe you haven't seen it in many years or a while, and now you're seeing something different. So I watched War of the Worlds. It was on Netflix, like early on in COVID, when people were still reeling, and unfortunately some of us had, not me, but my aunt got sick and we were very worried about her. We're freaking out. My dad's trying to stay healthy. So it was still that level of, not everybody, everyone handles these things and handle that specifically differently. But I was very aware and alert of things that I would not have been aware and alert of before. Now, in my particular case, as many of you know, if you have watched my videos and have followed me, I had never owned any home gym equipment until COVID. I went to Bev Francis Powerhouse Gym Syosset basically every day, so to speak, for decades. But I didn't split, a lot of people 20 years ago, I have a home gym, I come to Bev's a couple of days a week, whatever, it's fine. But I had never done that. I had never considered it And then as COVID began to encroach upon us, and we start having these unpleasant conversations, I think the gyms are about to shut down. We better get something. I went ahead. I was proactive, and I ordered a bunch of stuff off Amazon. I ordered an elliptical. I ordered dumbbells. I ordered a bench so that at least I would be prepared. Now, I had seen War of the Worlds probably 4 times from start to finish, between renting it late in 2005 until May of 2020. But I hadn't seen the movie in probably 7 or 8 years. So when Tom Cruise takes his kids on the road to hopefully reconnect with mom and the grandparents in, I think, Boston, they stop at the house of the stepfather. His name is Tim. And Cruise has a few laughs. Well, he's smiling, he's not laughing, but he has a couple of kind of funny interactions with, his ex-wife, who he presumably still loves, new husband. So they get to the house, and this is when they realize, okay, they're not here, and they have to go to Boston. But with all the shit that's going on, Cruise says, we're going to go into the basement. And this is something that we saw in another alien invasion movie, a more conventional iteration of War of the Worlds, M. Night Shyamalan's Signs, where Mel Gibson and Joaquin Phoenix take the kids to the basement because presumably it'll be safer. Now, I'd seen this movie at least 4 times, maybe more. And here it is, May 2020, and we're watching the film, and they're upstairs, and then Tom Cruise says, let's go to the basement. And they go down into the basement, and Tom Cruise sees an unbelievable, high-tech, probably $50,000 cost home gym. Now, I don't know how somebody like myself could have seen this movie 4 times, and it never registered. And Tom Cruise even says, that's nice, or something like that, where he's indicating, what the fuck, this guy's got this kind of money? He's just throwing tens of thousands of dollars on a home gym that looks like it's not even being used. Nice, as he says, nice. So when I watched the War of the Worlds during COVID and suddenly we get to this scene, I'm sorry, I'm embarrassed to admit this. This is what I did. I paused the movie, rewinded it, and I recorded off my phone this scene because I was incredulous that somehow it never landed. Look at this fucking home gym that Tim has. He was prepared for this kind of thing. He was prepared for the gyms being closed. Of course, during an alien invasion, we're all going to die anyway. So whether or not a gym is open or closed, pick your poison. You want to die there or here? Maybe it's better to die at home. Maybe it's better to die out in the wild. Who the fuck knows? But that never hit. It didn't hit until we were experiencing something where a home gym suddenly was paramount and took precedence, took premium, and in many cases was the only way you were going to get a conventional workout because the commercial gyms, at least around here, were closed. But I was saying earlier how War of the Worlds is informed and is a post 9/11 text. Steven Spielberg, his art was influenced by real life. My assessment of art, my uptake had shifted because of what was going on in the world in May of 2020. These are not things that I really even spent that much time thinking about as a big movie fan when I was a kid. When I got to film school, I started thinking of these things because often I was reminded, do you really think that the character is wearing a different shirt here? You think that's just that the director told him to show? Well, yeah. No. Art reflects culture. Culture informs art. This is all 1 + 1 = 2 kind of stuff. Tom takes the kids on the road, and at a certain point, and it's subtle in Cruise's performance, he is no longer their buddy. He is no longer just trying to pawn them off on his ex-wife. It's almost as if he metaphorically plants his feet and says, I'm going to die before my kids. I'm okay with it. And I will fight to my last breath to protect them both. Nothing is going to happen to them. I don't give a fuck. And so he has a lot of arguments. His son wants to fight alongside the military, whatever it is. And that angle, I feel, is the only, for me, just for me, it's the only flaw in the movie. If you ask me, the 2005 War of the Worlds, rated on a scale of 1 to 10, I'm giving it a 9 out of 10. That's how good I think this film is. That is how beautifully constructed, especially the first act, when we first realize there's something weird in the sky. The sequences they're all brilliantly orchestrated. And the only weakness for me that this film has is the character of the son. It could have been handled better. There was a better through line for the son, and there was a better ultimate resolution for the son. It's the one weakness in an otherwise just dynamite movie. Now, M. Night Shyamalan's Signs, which I've just referenced, similar concept. You have a family, in this case, Mel Gibson and his brother, Mel's 2 kids, and Joaquin is the uncle. But you have a similar run out there where they are fighting. They're not really fighting for humanity, as it turns out. They're just fighting to not die, because they get word that, well, maybe it's not as terrible as we think. Maybe the aliens are vulnerable. Like it's a very similar kind of a story. I feel as if Signs it's a different movie because it is so focused on the family. It's not really an action film. War of the Worlds, as presented, is more of an action sci-fi, whereas Signs, it's closer to a horror film. And there are many people who would consider Signs to just be, no, it's a straight-up horror film. No equivocation. I like them equally. I would give them both 9 out of 10. It does feel, though, that Spielberg left something on the table, that there was a better angle for the son. The movie, to me, would be a 10 out of 10. But any notion and idea that Cruise does not give a good performance, that he does not craft a well-rounded three-dimensional character in Ray Ferrier, bullshit. It's one of his certainly undersold, unsung, terrific film performances. Yes, he gets to do some movie star stuff, but he does a lot of non-movie star stuff. And he's still that incredible charisma that you can't teach in an acting class. It's all there. And he has really good chemistry with Dakota Fanning. Okay, they don't look anything alike, but their scenes together and the way that he relates to her, where sometimes he's impatient and other times he has boundless patience. He feels like a real dad. You know, he absolutely feels like a real dad. Now, here's a personal note. So I read about the movie and I saw previews. So I had an idea. I knew that Tim Robbins was in the film, that he was going to probably show up in the second half of the movie. But that's it. I didn't know any of the particulars or the mechanics of what Tim Robbins' character is doing in the film. So my father saw the movie with his lady friend the Saturday it opened. Now, he also was a Tom Cruise fan, and he was a Spielberg fan. I think my father saw every movie Spielberg ever made, with the possible exception of the most recent one, The Post. Or I should say the most recent one, a recent one, The Post. He loved Spielberg. So he was excited to see it. He had read the book, and he had enjoyed the movie Signs, and I'd said, well, it's probably going to be somewhat like that. No, but that's okay. I'm looking forward to it. So he went to see War of the Worlds on its opening weekend. And this story is more about theatrical projection than the movie itself. So my dad came home and the next day, and I said, "What'd you think of the movie?" He said, I thought the story was really good, but there are certain parts in the second half of the film where I don't understand why they made the movie so dark. Oh, really? He said, yeah, it's as if there were whole chunks in the second half. There's this really long scene where we know that it's Tom Cruise, and I think that they are taken into a basement by like a survival sort of a guy, but you really couldn't see what was going on, and I didn't understand why they did it that way. It's okay. All right. And I kind of filed that away. So my dad liked the movie, but he couldn't really see what was going on in an important, like, let's say 10 minutes of movie. No problem. So I said, Dad, what did you think of Tim Robbins in the movie? My dad gives me a look like he didn't even know that Tim Robbins was in the movie, which is exactly what it was. He goes, what do you mean Tim Robbins? Tim Robbins was in this movie? I said, yeah, what? You didn't see him? He said, no. So I said to him, I said, Dad, I think what you're telling me about the 10 minutes or whatever it was where you couldn't see what was going on, I would say that that's probably where Tim Robbins, because he could hear somebody's voice, he didn't recognize the voice as Tim Robbins' voice. Apparently, this particular movie theater had the bulbs set way too low. And it's not, I never experienced that. I've never been to a movie where I said, man, it's so dark here. And it turned out that the issue was the projector, or that they didn't have the bulbs of the projector turned to the proper brightness. Like, what are you fucking kidding me? So my dad would have liked the movie more, and then when he saw it on home video, when I rented it, he liked it even more than me. He said, I can finally see Tim Robbins. This is great. We were joking around about it, but he was only exaggerating by a little bit. He thought that there were stylistic choices, and he couldn't understand it, when in fact, it was just the fucking projector was not working properly, or that they just hadn't set it right. Anyway, as of right now, and I always like to give the information, as you know, of is the movie streaming free anywhere, etc., etc. War of the Worlds, as we speak, is streaming free on Paramount Plus. That's the biggest streamer where you don't have to rent it or watch it on television. It's also streaming on Pluto. The problem with Pluto, that's a free app. You have to deal with a lot of commercials. Way more commercials than free apps such as Tubi. So if you have Paramount Plus and you're interested, that's where you should see it. It's streaming free. I say streaming free, but you probably pay for Paramount Plus. But you don't have to pay anything extra if you happen to subscribe to Paramount Plus. I think that it's a great film. It's not in the Spielberg top 5. It's not in my Tom Cruise top 5, but it's knocking on the door, and it gets so many things right that I do wish that all of that absurdity with Tom Cruise hadn't happened, because the film, I believe, would have gotten better reviews. It's fresh. It's 75-80% on Rotten Tomatoes, which is a good score, but I feel like it would be an even higher score if Cruise had not had that absurdity with Matt Lauer and then the couch jumping with Oprah, which was really amazing. I mean, from an entertainment perspective, it showed he was human. It showed that he could lose his temper. It showed that he could legitimately experience joy and not be afraid to humiliate himself on television. I thought that was good, but that's neither here nor there. War of the Worlds is a phenomenal film, very few flaws, beautifully acted and constructed and executed by one of the greats in Steven Spielberg. War of the Worlds, released on this day, 2005, directed by Steven Spielberg and starring Tom Cruise, Dakota Fanning, the voice of Morgan Freeman, and a whole host of terrific supporting performers, including the great Miranda Otto. This has been episode 229 of the Confessions of a Not So Dangerous Mind podcast. I'd like to thank you all for spending some of your Saturday afternoon into early evening with me here in New York. If you caught this episode on the YouTube channel, haven't done so already, please click like, subscribe, comment, share, turn on those notifications. Or if you catch this episode on the audio platforms such as Spotify or iTunes, same general rule applies. Click like, subscribe, share, and turn on those notifications. I'll be back with episode 230 real soon. Until then, peace.